dad was a truck driver when he left the military in the late 2000s. By the time my siblings and I were born, he only drove in our home state of Texas, and summers were extremely busy for him. This incident happened in 2006, one of his extended trips across Texas. I believe he was driving south on 281. He was getting pretty tired when he pulled into a truck stop. He was making his way to the on-site convenience store when he noticed a young woman pacing in front of the shop. She looked to be in her early 20s, slim, very pretty, and wore a tank top with cut-off shorts, normal attire for Texas summers. She was carrying a plate covered with aluminum foil, as if she were making her way home from a family barbecue. Dad finishes his business in the store and headed back to his truck, where he was stunned to see the blonde woman sitting in his passenger seat. He was utterly shocked. He had no clue who this woman was or how she got inside. Dad was always vigilant on the road. He never left his truck unlocked. He demanded that she get out. He wasn't afraid yet, but something felt off about the mysterious woman. She sat there, staring at him with the covered plate on her lap, not saying a word. For a moment, he debated simply getting out, walking over to the passenger side, yanking her out of the cab. But he decided against it. I'm still not sure why. The whole thing was beyond strange. So Dad, against his better judgment, cranks his rig and drives off, the blonde still in the passenger seat. A few miles later, he attempts to make conversation. I guess he was trying to quell his extreme discomfort. He asked her name, but the woman remained silent. As he continued down the highway, lustful thoughts began to creep into his mind. I'm sure it had been a while since he'd last seen my mother, and they were way out here in the rural Texas roads. Who would find out? Just this one time. What could happen, right? Dad put his hand on her thigh, right above her knee, and the moment he touched her, the woman turned from a gorgeous young woman into a hellish monster. Her face became rugged, her eyes black, her teeth, they grew sharpened into fangs, and her tongue was unnaturally long. The demonic figure let out a guttural hiss, and the plate that she was holding suddenly began to move, as if it were a pile of withering worms beneath the foil. A putrid smell penetrated the truck's cab. Dad quickly turned his face away and managed to stop on the side of the road. As the truck came to a halt, Dad threw open his door and he jumped out. After his breathing returned to normal, he composed himself and looked back at the truck. The demonic woman had vanished. He was alone. He prayed for God to rebuke the evil spirit before eventually getting back into his truck and driving off. The woman never returned, but it took a while for the lingering stench to dissipate. When Dad got home, he recounted everything to Mom. He was so upset that she forgave him for being unfaithful. He'd seen a lot in his life, but nothing had ever frightened him like that. He blamed himself for impure thoughts, and it's possible that's why he attracted the evil spirit. Some might argue that people cheat all the time, but nothing like this happens. I can't explain why. I only know what happened to my dad on the very dark, lonely roads of Texas. When I was older, I asked about his experience, but he would never respond with words. He only just nodded. In 1994, I was 24 and at the ER with a piece of glass lodged in my pinky finger. It had a pretty nasty infection. The doctor removed the glass, irrigated the wound, and sent me home with instructions to return if anything worsened. Home was a 30-minute drive, and within moments of arriving, I began to feel immense pain. I immediately went back to the hospital, but by then, the pain was completely unbearable. The veins in my right arm were purple. It felt like someone had used a spade bit to drill a hole in my hand before dousing it in gasoline and striking a match. I collapsed on the ER floor, and the next thing I knew, they were cutting the ring off of my swollen finger and preparing me for surgery. The doctor asked if I was willing to lose my hand to save my life, and I told him to do whatever was necessary. I later woke up in the ICU with a severe strep infection. I still had my hand, but they cut open my pinky, palm, and wrist to scrape the infection from my nerves and tendons. I stayed in the ICU for 2 weeks, but my blood counts weren't improving. One night, I had a dream, or a vision, if you will. I woke to a black shadow lifting and dropping the end of my bed, but it disappeared after startling me awake. Terrified, I rang the nurse's bell several times, but when there was no response, I got up to find the nurse's station. The hospital was different. The lights were off in my room, and the door was open. I walked down the dimly lit hallway, and it was nasty. Filth was dripping and oozing down the urine-colored walls. There were a few people roaming around, but they were dead. Slowly shuffling about in their hospital gowns with their IV stands, I ran back to my room and jumped into bed. The black shadow returned, and I realized he was neither death or a demon. He didn't have detailed facial or body features, just a black humanoid body surrounded by an aura of darkness. Without making a sound, he violently repeated, lifting the end of the heavy hospital bed and slamming it down, shaking it side to side. Finally, with as much authority as possible, I yelled, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to go." The room momentarily went black, and there was a sudden bam. A bright white electricity shattered the void to envelop the demon with a crackling vehemence. The creature reacted as if it were being fried by 20,000 volts of pure electricity, and just like that, it was gone. I woke to the welcoming sight of bright lights, a sanitized room, and beeping monitors. When I rang the nurse's bell, they came immediately and checked everything out. The next morning, the doctor said my blood work was great, with a normal white cell count, which, don't forget, there had been 14 days of no improvement before that. I was released the following day, and I went through vigorous physical therapy to regain full use of my hand. It took 28 years to write this experience, so I'm sharing it here with you.